fellow Planeswalkers.
I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And you're listening to the newest episode of the Commander-at-Arms podcast. This week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about Dungeons and Dragons, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms teaser statements from Mark Rosewater, who is the head designer for Magic the Gathering. But before we get into that topic, we have our upkeep trigger to do. We want to thank all of our patrons, everybody who supports us on Patreon. We love the amount of patrons that we have. We'd like to maybe get a little bit more, but we're not going to really push on it. You guys really help to keep the lights on around here and keep this going forward and helping us make the content that we want to make that you guys love to hear. If you want to become a patron and help us out, you can do that at patreon.com/commanderatarms. Paul, have you had anything interesting come in the mail or any interesting finds that you found hanging around your local LGS or maybe just in a box that was in your closet?
As far as mail day goes, I got my set booster box, which I may or may not have talked about last time. I don't remember. But if you haven't seen that, I actually recorded that, and it is on our YouTube channel. But other than that, I also received some mail that was not actually for myself. It was actually as part of the giveaway. I finally got all the stuff together, and that should be ready to go out very shortly. But yeah, that's about it. Other than that set booster box, nothing particularly interesting.
I mean, that set booster box was a pretty good opening. No, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it was pretty good.
I really enjoyed watching that one. I watched it myself while I was editing it, and it was really cool, man. I think I talked about this last week, but I got Tainted Pact in the mail. I believe that was last week that came in. I don't think I've gotten anything in the mail lately. Haven't really got any interesting finds in my boxes of piles of cards that I've gotten either, and I haven't really been on LGS recently either. Because I've just been busy doing other things currently. So this is the first time since introducing this little segment that I don't have anything to talk about. So, which is cool, because you mentioned the YouTube channel, and I did just upload a brand new deck tech to that one on Lunas Cryptozoologist. So go and check that out, and while you're there, check out Paul's set booster box opening. You can do that at YouTube, Commander at Arms. Don't forget to subscribe, like the videos, comment, helps with the algorithm, help us get our name out there, show your friends, ring the bell for the extra, for the notification when we release content on there as well. These episodes go live on the YouTube channel as well. So if you're already here and on YouTube, welcome. If you're not here on YouTube yet, go and check it out. And with that, we have Play of the Week to deal with, Paul. Have you played any Magic?
All right. So I have been absolutely exhausted. I couldn't play any Magic over the weekend, and I actually had a couple opportunities to do so, but I was quite busy on Friday and Saturday. Not to mention that for me to get to the group that I play Magic with typically on the weekends, it's about a 50-ish minute drive, and it has been storming for the past week and a half straight in Florida. So not a drive I'm particularly keen on doing while it is pouring rain and thundering and lightning. So I still have not played any Magic recently. Although this time it is not because I'm taking a break. It's just because the conditions were unfortunate.
I mean, that's totally fair. It rained today. Like we were doing our pre-production script writing talks and everything before the episode, and I walked out to grab a beverage, grab a bottle of water, and it was bucketing down with rain. And then I turned around and it was gone. I'm like, that's Florida for you.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know if it's actually picking up on my mic, but it is literally thundering right now as we record.
Oofed. I love that ambiance and that feel of rushness, I guess, because we got to get through this quick. So I had a play of the week. I actually got to play Magic in person on Saturday night. It wasn't Friday. I got to teach two, I guess it's my partner's cousins. So I got to teach them how to play Magic. So we all got to sit around the table. I showed them how to play Jumpstart first. So I got them, they never knew anything about Magic until that night. There was a little bit of talks going on between, family members and everything on like what Magic is and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, all right, the easy way to do this is to just tell them the difference between like a spell and a land card. And that was pretty much what I did. I was like, that's it. And then I handed them 2 Jumpstart packs, cracked the packs, opened them up, look at what they got, shuffle them up, play a game. And we got through that in about a good, it was like an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours on just that game. Because it was very much a lot of back and forth and no one really getting like early board state advantages or drawing, cards or anything. And this is like they're lower power decks than standard. So it's even lower decks than our commander decks. And then we put those aside after, one person won. We went on to Commander, and I brought 3 of my Naya decks and 1 Teamer deck. Now, if you are a fan of this show and a fan of what we do, you may know which decks they are. But if not, it was Obun, Maldire, Ancestor. It was Girad, Exile, Conclave, and Gishath, Sun's Avatar. And the Teamer deck was taking Calamax to the max. So I got to play Calamax and do all those disgusting blue things that we told the boys, blue likes to do, like draw a lot of cards and counter spells. Because as my partner went to cast a Dark Steel Plate, I said no. And she wasn't very happy about that because she wanted to make Gishath indestructible and keep, just lining her board with more and more dinosaurs. The Obun player, which was the younger of the 2 boys, he resolved an Hour of Revelation, wiped the board, and then played a Scoot Swarm into a land. And I went, that was the greatest sequencing I've ever seen for someone who's just playing Magic for the first time. I was quite shocked. I was like, man, this kid's picking up so fast. And then the next turn comes around and he drops a land and then drops a bounce land. And like all of a sudden he's got like all these Scoot Swarm tokens. And he ended up winning the game off those Scoot Swarm tokens because of that tempo shift with the Hour of Revelation. I was shocked, man. I was so impressed and so proud. So I had a lot of fun. It was really good. I want to play Magic with them again. I want to see if it holds their interest.
You probably felt a lot like I did when I realized that you were a filthy combo player.
Whoa.
Like, I did this. I created this.
Yeah, but I created a good thing. You created a bad thing. You created me, which then went and created a Lunus, whatever, however everyone's pronounce him, Cryptozoologist deck, which is just your deck tribal. Anyway, we're about 10 minutes into the podcast and we haven't even started talking about what we're going to be talking about this episode. Paul, do you want to jump into it right now? Move to our
Let's go.
Main phase 1. So as we said at the start of the episode, we're talking about Dungeons and Dragons, and this is probably my favorite set for standard they've done in a while now. And I think it's just because, I'm a huge D&D fan, I'm a huge Magic fan, and seeing those kind of cross more than what they have before, because we got teasers of like it was Bag of Holding in M20 or M21, I think it was. That was a really cool card. The Crystal Shard, I guess, the artifact could also be a hint and a nod to something in D&D as well. But we have a decent amount of statements here to get through. There are 2 that we're going to talk about at the start. And Paul, if you want to just go through those ones really quickly for us, because we've already seen these cards actually spoiled as of time of recording.
Yeah, so we're recording this on Tuesday, June 29th at about 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So for anything that is spoiled directly after we record, we didn't know. We apologize if it gets revealed before Thursday or whenever you listen to this.
I will say that as we were talking about this episode, we got one of these statements, actually 2 of these statements spoiled. So we'll talk about those ones a little later.
Yeah. So previously, we had a card spoil called Minion of the Mighty. The statement I'm talking about is an ability that cares about attacking with a certain amount of power of creatures. And that has actually been confirmed to be the mechanic Pack Tactics. And the card I just mentioned, Minion of the Mighty, is where you can find that text printed if you want to check that out. Just in case we end up doing a spoiler episode, we're not going to be talking about these cards in detail. You've probably seen them already anyway, but just in case you want to go and check them out yourself, we will just mention the name of them. Next is cards that let you decide where the story goes. And we're pretty sure this is talking about the dungeon diving mechanic, which you have also probably seen already. Basically, there's 3 different dungeons that you can pick from, and you get to delve into each one. And anytime something tells you to, I forgot what the text they uses, but whenever something tells you to go deeper into the dungeon or like to dive into the dungeon, you start a dungeon or you go further in the one that you're already in.
Yeah, I believe it's called Enter the Dungeon.
There you go. That's the one. Venture into the dungeon. There you go.
That's
what
it.
says. Yeah.
Cool.
But those are the only two that have been fully confirmed. There are two more, like James just said, but we took the time to not map them out, but we took the time to like come up with our own theories already. So we have those written out, and we're just going to talk about those as well.
Yeah. So the first one I'm going to get in here is a brand new enchantment subtype, and we were thinking about boons in D&D. Basically, it's a way to kind of get past the level 20 restriction that kind of makes your character become from a human to a demigod, essentially. So we thought maybe we might see some sort of new equipment or a boon maybe that kind of helps buff your character or buff a legendary creature only or a non-legendary creature only or something to do with a boon.
Yeah, I actually came up with this one myself, and James informed me that it's not actually like an official D&D thing. It's kind of a homebrew thing. But my thought process was that, well, we have curses in Magic already, but we don't have ones that are like good to enchant players with, really. Well, I guess technically they're auras, but like this would be a good spot to print a boon or like, the opposite of a curse.
That's really cool play space. I like that because you can curse people and then boon people and kind of you really just want this for your Garth deck, don't you? Because it's going to be in like your D&D inspired giving people permanents. You can just like, hey, I don't like your deck, have a curse. Oh, you're doing something really cool. I like that. Have a boon, like whenever you draw a card, draw an extra card or something.
I definitely would not mind that. I certainly would not mind. But my other idea was that since it specifies new enchantment subtype, I was thinking possibly, depending on how this is interpreted, it could be arcane. Arcane is already a subtype in Magic, but it's only found on instants and sorceries, not enchantments. And arcane things are pretty common, pretty popular in D&D, at least as far as I know. So that would be an interesting thing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have nothing else to really say about boons, so we can move on to the next one if you want, Paul.
Yeah.
So a card granting -11, -11. Euro Tragic Slip Part 3. Do you want to, expand that thought for me?
I don't really know how to. Like, we had Tragic Slip in Innistrad. We had the new Tragic Slip that was just printed in Modern Horizons 2. And now we have this card, which, granted, it's not exactly Tragic Slip because Tragic Slip is -13, -13 to fit in with the whole, 13 is an unlucky or unholy number thing.
11 could be that new number. We don't know that.
Well, I am not too familiar, and I've said this before, but I'm not too familiar with D&D, like Vorthos or, I'm not even that familiar with the spells. So somebody out there that is far more knowledgeable than myself can probably know what this is just by looking at it. Like -11, -11 seems like a very specific thing, especially given the context that we have, which is, the world of D&D. So I'm sure somebody out there knows exactly what this is. Me and James took a lot of time to research these things and come up with these theories. But this one, I just could not. I didn't even know where to start to research this one.
I mean, we did a decent amount of research for these. Like this next one, I think I went really hard into like theory crafting it and everything. And then to have it spoiled right before we went to record, it was kind of gut wrenching because I wanted to be right so bad because I thought it was going to be so cool. But this next one is a creature with a death trigger that makes an equipment token. And my mind went to slimes.
Yeah, the actual card is called Icing Death Frost Tyrant, which was spoiled literally an hour ago.
Yeah.
As we record.
Not happy. Anyway, not even going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about my theory crafted version of what this meant. And that was essentially slimes want to, they engulf people. They eat people. And then they digest all of the living tissue and the bone. And what's left is the helmets and the swords and the bucklers and everything that was kind of on the person before they died. So I was thinking that maybe if there are, when the slime dies, it then leaves behind the equipment. So that way you can have a slime covered axe or a slime covered sword, and the way slime covered weapons work in D&D is that they leave a slime token on you, and then if you fail your save, I think it's a strength check, I believe it is, you get knocked prone. Or if you just wait 10 minutes, like the tokens go, like the counters go away. And we had this idea of like, what if when this thing attacks, if it deals damage to a creature, they get a counter on it, and if they have to roll a die or something to kind of like simulate that con save or that strength check, and if they fail it, they get tapped down. Like, I think that'd be really cool. That would have been really cool design. I don't know how it would have been balanced for maybe standard play and like competitive Magic play, but as like a lore and flavor kind of aspect, it would have been absolutely on point.
Yeah, and it was cool to see James get so excited like once we came up with the text of the card. The one thing that I didn't put here that it probably would do is that the creature would stay tapped until its next turn. It would have to make another check, and it would stay tapped as long as it failed checks. That would be cool. But as it is, we have a big old frosty dragon.
Yeah, well, because it says like it's if you get certain amount of counters on it, they just kind of fall off. So I was like, oh, if that's a thing, then like if you get like 3 counters on it, then your creature just then untaps because it can untap.
Whatever that means.
I mean, it works in my head. But yeah, like Paul said, we get a big old frost giant dragon thing instead, which is funny because Icing Death is a spell, I believe, in D&D, and something to do with it's also the name of Drizzt Do'Urden's main hand sword as well, which is funny because we also have Drizzt Do'Urden in this set. So I don't know where I think
that's baffling to me.
Yeah, I still think they're trying to. I think they're not really doing like a 1-to-1 ratio on the lore in Magic to D&D, or sorry, D&D to Magic. I still think they're trying to like spin it a little bit, and that's what they've done with this new Frost Tyrant. So because the card's been spoiled, I'm not going to talk about it anymore. We're going to move on to something now that hasn't been spoiled that I'm still really excited to talk about, because this one was also another one of those like it clicked. There's like the moment when I was researching it. I went down this weird rabbit hole about like what this next one could be, and it's a legendary creature that makes a legendary hamster creature token. And there is only one character in all of D&D that does this, and that's Minsk. So he was a kind-hearted but rather addled. He's a Rashmir warrior who is known for his habit of talking to a hamster. He believed that the animal called Boo was a miniature giant space hamster, but no one else ever saw evidence of the hamster. And these space hamsters are actual like lore creatures in D&D.
And just to put it out there for credit purposes, whenever we're reading like specific text like we just did, it comes from the D&D wiki.
Yes. That is our source material for this episode.
But yeah, like there's only one named space hamster, which is Boo, and the person who they're companion with is Minsk. So it just seems like obvious that this it feels like this has to be this legendary creature, right? Yeah, I can't think of anything else, any other way to possibly fit a hamster, like lore-wise, into this set.
Well, yeah, because it makes a legendary hamster creature token. So it's kind of like in that same design space as Ragavan. He came out as a creature token on, I can't remember the pirate's name, but it was mono red. Captain Lannery
Pirate
Storm?
Karizev?
Yeah, that's it. So whenever she attacked, you would get a 2/1 Ragavan token. And then they made it into an actual creature itself. So maybe this kind of like, is in the same design space as that, and maybe we'll get a Boo creature by itself that we can make decks around instead of having to make it around Minsk, who then gets a Boo token. Who knows?
This would be awesome, because I didn't know about this pair prior to us doing research on this, and after reading a bit about them, it is one of the most lovable characters I've ever learned about.
I also think that maybe like color wise, I want to say Selesnya. I want to say green white for these people. Like for this pair.
Definitely feels like there's green in there somewhere. As far
Yeah.
as it being, well, I guess it could be Naya, right?
Could be Naya. I mean, he is Minsk is a warrior, and he is, he's still pretty kind-hearted, so that's where the kind of like the whitish and the blue would come into it. So maybe Naya is a good spot for where this legendary creature might end up, if we're right at all.
As long as I can make hamsters in my Gira deck, I'm okay.
Oh, dude, I didn't even think about that. I'm not even gonna do Rhino Tribal's gone. It's Hamster Tribal from now on.
It is legendary, but I'll just throw a Helm of the Host on it and populate the non-legendary one, and I'll have infinite hamsters.
If there's one time you ever go infinite, please make it infinite hamsters. Oh my god, I didn't realize how much I needed this in my life until you said it. So the next one we have on the list here is something only seen previously in unsets. Comes to Black Border. So this is, what is it? Unhinged, unglued, unsanctioned, and
Unstable.
Unstable. There's always one that I miss.
There are quite a few things that have been done in unsets that have been pretty popular. But there's only one, maybe there's more than one, but there's one big one that is recurring in unsets.
And that's asking a random person if you want to make a squirrel or not.
Yeah, we'll probably never get high-fiving other opponents in other games as part of resolving an effect. That's probably never coming to Black Border. But one big one that has been a recurring thing in unsets is dice rolling. A lot of people, and James included actually, don't actually realize that dice rolling is not an official thing in Magic the Gathering. We use dice to represent like counters, even with like Mana Crypt, we roll dice instead of flipping coins. But there's no dice rolling in Black Border Magic officially. However, again, literally earlier today, they spoiled a card called Treasure Chest, which actually confirms that dice rolling will be coming to Black Border Magic. So that is pretty cool. The card itself is pretty good. I'd recommend going to check it out if you get a chance. But since that's already been confirmed, there's really not much to talk about here. For the record, though, we did get this one right. James can attest to this. We did say dice rolling before we even saw that card.
100%. We got it right. That's one for us. I don't know what the tally is with these episodes, but that's so far one for us from the D&D set. And Treasure Chest BT Dubs is a really good card, and I want it for Duretti. I mean, I think I want it just for flavor reasons, because I get to roll a dice, but also the fact that, I can just recur artifacts in that deck. So, like Paul said, not much to really talk about that card now. Now, we will go back and do a full set review on this set closer to it being released. We'll go through and break down everything that we usually do here on the show, but we're going to move on to the next statement, and that is an artifact that's a musical instrument that creates harmony counters. So as soon as I saw this one, I said to Paul, I'm like, it's got to be some sort of a lyre or a lute or some sort of, bard weapon. Maybe it's even connected to a bard. Maybe it's like a bard tribal, artifact, because we've had, shaman tribal artifacts with Thornbite Staff.
Yeah. The only thing is, though, is that tribal, at least as far as we know at this moment, is not a thing in this set. That's pretty much exclusively a Lorwyn thing. If that does come around, maybe we'll see, like you said, a bard equipment. Or maybe it'll say, maybe it'll be cheaper to equip to a bard, like they did with Helm of the Host. It's cheaper to, not Helm of the Host.
I was like, you can make Helm of the Host cheaper to equip. How do I do that? And how do I do that for Mono Red Godo?
Black Blade Reforged. Sorry, that's what I was thinking of. It's cheaper to equip to a legendary creature.
Yeah.
And then maybe they'll do something like that where it's maybe it's free to equip to a bard, but it costs 3 or 4 to equip to a regular creature.
I mean, that'd be really cool.
There's a lot of design space for this one, a surprising amount, because equipment, typically they're colorless, which means that they don't really have to be associated with anything in particular. I feel like it definitely has to be a lyre or a lute, though.
Yeah.
I don't know what other instruments are in D&D.
I mean, it's pretty much the same as what we have in real life. I mean, D&D is just it's like a second life kind of thing. So whatever you can really do in real life, you can do in D&D, but more embellished, I guess. But I mean, lyres and lutes are more atoned with that kind of time period, I guess, that D&D is trying to be set in.
It makes harmony counters though.
Yeah.
So it makes me feel like it's singing multiple parts of like a song or a ballad, which is something that bards are known for.
Maybe it's singing sword. A sword that dances next to you. No.
Right.
But I mean, like, a harmony counter could, like, harmony... Oh, they're harmony counters. I thought they were harmony tokens.
No, counters.
They're counters. So that changes my whole thought aspect of what this could be completely. Maybe a harmony counter is going to be, like, keyworded to give special effects to certain creatures, maybe? Maybe it, like, it because, I mean, like, if you think about it, bards really use musical instruments to inspire and buff other players, as well as, you know, beat face with a guitar, which is really cool.
Well, bards use, like, different bard songs give different buffs to the party, right?
Yeah.
Am I correct in just thinking that's how that...
Yeah,
Okay.
no, that's correct.
So what if this equipment, whatever it is, said, like, pay a certain amount of mana and maybe tap it? And it might actually not even be an equipment, now that I'm reading it, but whatever the case may be, maybe it says like pay 3, tap it, put a harmony counter on it, and then your creatures get a buff based on how many harmony counters are on it. Like for if it has 1 counter, they get like +1/+0. If they got 2 counters, they get like +1/+1. If it's got 3 counters, they get like first strike. And you know, as you keep singing the song, you get more and more buffs.
I like that. I think that, yeah, I mean, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's not an equipment. These things, they're so thought-provoking and so theory crafting that's why I love the way that they're written, because they really make you think about the design space of, one, how we've done, like what we've done in Magic previously, and what would be really fun to have going forward. And that's, yeah, I kind of like that. Like, it's kind of like a level up system, but on an artifact.
Right, and flavor-wise, it makes total sense.
Oh, yeah. The flavor in these are fantastic. Like, it's chef's kiss. This is the Underworld cookbook of teaser statements. So the next one we have is a card that can keep your opponent from winning the game. And I just wrote Platinum Angel-like effect. Like on the script, I was like, yeah, like Platinum Angel does a thing. Maybe it's something similar to that. And then Paul went through and wrote something else, Paul.
So I don't know if this is actually a thing in D&D. I'm pretty sure it is. But in Magic, we have a precedent for effects like this. And it's usually tied to something having to do with like a lich or the lich, whatever the case may be. And it has to do with like some extreme drawback, but it gives you like a lot of power. And James, are liches a thing in D&D?
Yeah.
So maybe we'll get another type of lich card that is relatively different from its predecessors. I don't know. It's hard to say. Thinking about these things through the context of D&D instead of just Magic is a really interesting challenge.
I mean, you are not wrong. And I love it how you asked me if liches are like in D&D when literally the next one we're about to talk about is a lich. So, yes, Paul, liches are in D&D. What can I say? And from here, we're going to move on to the next one we have, and that is a card that creates a legendary creature token named Vecna.
This one, I'd say this is the one we did the most research into, and only because the character itself, Vecna, is so cool and the story is really interesting that it actually made James say, I want to play D&D again.
Oh, yeah. Like, I texted my mate and was like, I'm getting the itch to play D&D. And, I mean, that also comes from last night. I was just, you know, doing some work behind the laptop here in the studio, and I had a stream open that was my mate, and he was painting D&D miniatures. And then he raided a guy who was playing a D&D SRD game. So it uses the D&D rules in what was essentially like a top-down action RPG styled video game. I can't remember what it was called. If I could remember what it was called, I'd be saying that. But that was really cool too. And then we went from that to then talking about D&D, and it was like, oh man, I really just want to, you know, pull out my my barbarian skills and just go and, you know, ransack a town or two.
So what we came across was actually came across a whole story for this character named Vecna. And like James said, Vecna is like some kind of lich or something.
I mean,
similar to that at least.
I wrote it in the script. I'm gonna read it. This came directly from the D&D wiki, but it really kind of cements the idea that we had for the card. So it says, the quote is, during his reign, Vecna trusted his lieutenant Cass with most administrative tasks. He forged the powerful sword of Cass as an instrument of his lieutenant's authority. However, Vecna's evil manifested in the sword seduced Cass into usurping and killing his master. Cass then battled Vecna, who banished him to the realm of Cavicius, but not in time to avoid his own destruction. The only traces left of Vecna's physical body were his left hand and his eye, which still carried a fragment of the Lich's will. Their latent power turned them into artifacts known as the Hand of Vecna and the Eye of Vecna. So we thought there may be an artifact in the game called Vecna's Remains that lets you either pay mana and tap it, or do some sort of activated ability on the artifact that lets you create maybe a 4/4 or a 5/5 Vecna, a legendary creature token named Vecna.
Right, and it's up to anybody's interpretation what exactly Vecna will do. Maybe it won't be just one card. Maybe we'll actually have two artifacts called the Hand and Eye of Vecna, and maybe you'll have to have both in order to make the token, depending on how good this token is, right? Or maybe they'll fetch each other, and then they have a separate ability that you can activate once they're both on the field.
Yeah, kind of like Partner.
Partner's a good one. It'll probably be maybe a slightly better version of the Empire's equipment or artifact cycle, which is if you have, there's a crown, a scepter, and a throne, and if you have each one on the field, they get super powered versions of their abilities. It was a weird cycle, but maybe we'll see something similar to that here with the Hand and the Eye. Hard to say, but it seems pretty likely that this is at least on the right track. It wouldn't really make sense for Cass to make the Vecna token because Cass is the one that killed Vecna and it was his lieutenant, so it would make more sense for Vecna to make Cass. I don't know. It's kind of up in the air at this point. Obviously, with all of these things, it is. But I honestly really hope that this card is awesome because I want this card to see play.
Yeah, I do as well, and I think it's just for flavor reasons. I really want to dive headfirst into this set, just ripping apart all of the lore, the lore things and the mechanics, and just playing Magic. And I think my the biggest change that I love that they've done is get rid of those Planeswalker decks and put in Commander decks instead. Because if we got Planeswalker decks around this set, I wouldn't have been as happy. But the fact that we're getting four brand new D&D inspired Commander decks that are built to be played in a pod of you adventuring is super cool. And Paul, this is one of those decks that we need to get all four of them and get some friends together and play.
For sure. And I should be able to get some decent parts for my my Garth Dungeon Diving deck.
Yes, and when you get that deck together as well, I want to play even more. So, with all that said, we're going to go to our combat phase now. We just got to summon a legendary creature token named Vecna, and we're going to attack with it. And we're going to wonder how you're going to block, or if you're going to take it to the dome. So we're going to hear a message from our sponsors right now. Welcome back from that ad break. How did you block? Did you take it? Let us know. So we're going to move through to our main phase 2 here. So next up, we have some rules text that will be showing up on cards. And we have, I think it's maybe 10 of these at a quick glance. So the first one we have, Enchanted Permanent is a treasure artifact.
This one to me sounds like it's going to be another a silence. I hate using Hearthstone terms in Magic, but Magic doesn't really have a term for this. Silence meaning that it loses all its abilities and such. So kind of like Imprisoned in the Moon, which would be awesome, depending on what colors this is in, because I feel like red could probably use a little some kind of effect like this. Although the fact that it enchants a permanent and is an enchantment means it's probably not red. But it has to do with treasures, so we'll see. But also the fact that it's mentioning treasure makes me feel like there's going to be some kind of relevance of the treasure subtype in this set. We have seen precedent for this even as recent as Mountain Horizons 2 with like Lonus. Well, no, she cares about the clues. But we have seen things that sack specifically treasures or care about treasures being on the battlefield. So, I don't know. Maybe we'll see a new treasure theme develop here, since treasure is pretty popular in Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah, I thought, honestly, this effect was like an imprisoned effect. Like, I thought that's what, because I thought we would have gotten the name from Imprisoned in the Moon. Because, like, it's like Kenrith's transformation as well does the same thing. It turns Enchanted Permanent into an elk. It loses all abilities and turns it into a 3/3. So, I don't know. I mean, I wish we would get a name for this kind of effect. Because, I mean, Silence just makes a lot of sense, but we already have a card named Silence. So maybe not Silence.
Yeah, maybe, I don't know, Polymorph.
But Polymorph's also a card too that goes and gets you a creature out of your library if you sack a creature, right?
Is that card called Polymorph?
Yeah, I believe
it might
so.
be. I can't remember.
Yeah, because the artwork is like a crazy looking rabbit.
It's a It's a was it a Drizix? Is that what it's called?
I think so. Yeah. All right. The next one we have is Ward. Discard a card.
We actually just saw this in what was it? Strixhaven. I'm pretty sure. One of the black creatures had Ward discard a card. So we've seen this before, but like I mentioned previously on the last section, main phase 1, we have to think about these things in the terms of not just Magic but D&D. So like in Magic, Ward discard a card, whatever. It's just some form of protection. But in the context of D&D, it could mean anything. It could mean like a trap, or maybe it means that like you're attacking an illusion, or it's like something that makes copies of itself, so you have to like waste resources in order to actually kill it. It's really interesting to think about, honestly. The trap thing makes sense. The illusion thing maybe makes less sense. I don't know. Like I said, I'm no D&D expert, but either one is like pretty cool design space, and I'm really curious to see how accurate this is based on whatever this card happens to be.
So I just had a thought there, Paul. Ward, that is, you have to pay that cost when that creature is targeted with an activated ability or spell?
Yes.
Okay. Because I'm wondering, like, in Magic, having a hand, having less cards in hand, you're at a disadvantage to your opponent, right? What happens,
Yes.
like, what if, like, this Ward ability is tied to, like, casting or a spell, whatever, that's like a mage / wizard / warlock kind of thing, and they're having a disadvantage on the attack, because the disadvantage is
actually
you roll 2 dice and you take the lower number, whereas in Magic's equivalency with that would be having 1 less card in your hand to having less options.
That's actually a really interesting idea, and it honestly kind of makes me wish that this was Ward roll a d6. If you roll lower than 3, it fails. That would have been kind of cute. Probably a little on the OP side, because it means that your spell only hits 50% of the time. But that is actually probably the correct interpretation.
I mean, that's all this really is just interpretation. So let's move on to the next one here. It's exchange your hand and library.
So these, like, this part of Mark Rosewater's teasers is a lot more cryptic and a little more difficult to interpret than previously, because this is actual card text as opposed to like, actual names of cards or things that the cards do. So looking from a D&D perspective, again, exchanging your hand and your library, well, theoretically, your hand represents opportunity, right? Like you have these cards in front of you. And your library, since it is literally a library of spells, usually represents knowledge, and we've seen this in cards before, like Body of Knowledge. There's another like a blue enchantment that has to do with knowledge as well, that has to do with like drawing cards or whatever. But basically, maybe in like a D&D perspective, this means that you're like exchanging opportunity for knowledge, and maybe this card will reflect that. Maybe I'm severely overthinking this, and it's just some busted card that lets you draw 80 cards. Who knows?
No, because interpreting this in D&D, when you're a spellcaster, you have to set the spells that you know for the day. Like you have all this advantage, like you have all this vast knowledge of all these spells, but I believe the way that it works, because I haven't ever really played a spellcaster, and if I have, it's only been a dabble, and it was with people who didn't quite know exactly how the rules worked with it, so we were just like, any spell you know. But I believe it's like you fill your spell slots for the day kind of thing, and then every other spell that you can't cast because you didn't prepare it. So like that opportunities versus knowledge would be kind of throwing out all the spells that you already had physically, like you already had mentally prepared, and picking up the rest of the backlog of spells that you had in the back of your brain to the front. So you had like an advantage on that opportunity to be able to cast a spell that you didn't prepare because you didn't see us going into, a bugbear den and you needing a fireball to wipe everybody out kind of thing.
So what you're saying is that I'm not actually that far off base here.
I don't think you're that far off basis, honestly. I think you deep dived into it in like a different way, not really having like that kind of maybe that little hint of sprinkling of D&D knowledge that I have compared to it. But what you said made complete sense to what I interpreted it as.
You heard it here first, everybody. Paul, despite having very little knowledge of D&D, can somehow BS his way into something that sounds legit.
You're one of those people that I loathed in high school who could just BS their way through an essay and get like an A or like even a B. And I would like try so hard to connect all these dots and just, whatever, and get like a C or a D. Damn it. That's my life. So the next one we have here is skeletons, vampires, and zombies. And you wrote, duh.
I mean, like, it's obvious there's going to be skeletons and zombies. Vampires maybe a little less so, but like, they had to happen, right? You're going in dungeons, man. There's always skeletons and zombies.
I mean, yeah, I understand that. I wanted to like, kind of maybe expand on that point a little bit. So I went through and I was like, what if it's like a smite spell? Like Smite the Monstrous, but for these specific card types. Or maybe it's like, destroy target creature. Or maybe deal 1 damage to target creature if it's a skeleton, vampire, or zombies. Oh, it says end zombies. It deals, 3 extra damage. So you're doing 4 damage to it. And it was just... Because paladins have Smite, and it's like radiant holy damage. So maybe it was like, I was like, oh, maybe it's a single target spell. Maybe it's a board wipe that only board wipes skeletons, zombies, and vampires. But then that's really broken against those tribes in Magic for Commander. Because we got to think that not only is this opening up stuff for Standard, this also opens up more alleys for Commander players to get their hands on these sweet cards and deal more damage to, Edgar Markov players and maybe the Scarab God players.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. This one with those tribes, it makes it seem like maybe like it'll be like you said, a smite spell, and maybe it'll like if it's a skeleton, a vampire, zombie, it'll exile it instead. Or maybe like otherwise it'll just destroy it because skeletons and zombies and vampires are known for, well, at least in Magic, they're known for their ability to like come back from the graveyard and not actually die. On the other hand, maybe based on the way this is worded, it'll be like a white spell that like deals 2 damage, and skeletons, vampires, and zombies take 4 damage instead. Something to that effect. It's kind of hard to say, again, since I don't really have a lot of knowledge of these smite spells, so to speak. But the way James was explaining it, it made a lot of sense to me.
I mean, I believe the spell's called Divine Smite or Smite Divinity or something. Again, I didn't really play a paladin. I've just partied with paladins. So the next one we're gonna move on to here is spend this mana only to cast dragon spells or activate abilities of dragons.
This to me shouts Tiamat card, right? This has to be like a like one of Tiamat's followers or one of its spawn, one of its kin. I don't know, something like that. But we've seen cards like this before, and they were literally like followers of dragons. I don't remember the exact names of these cards off the top of my head, but they always had to do with being like the servant of dragons or one of their pawns, so to speak.
Yeah, well, there's like Draconic Disciple, who I guess is a Draconic Disciple who taps for green or red and has an activated ability to become a 7/7 dragon.
Right. And because we already have Tiamat in the set, it seems like pretty obvious to me that this has to do with Tiamat. How could it not have something to do with one of the most legendary dragons of all time?
Yeah, exactly. Like, he's a cool dragon. Following that, we've got for each different mana value among non-land cards in your graveyard.
I had trouble coming up with something for this one, mainly because that line of text we've seen so many times on so many different cards, and there's a lot of different ways to print a card with that text, at least that we've seen. But one of the most unique cards, I would say, to ever use that text is a card called Seasons Past, which I believe is an M15, if I'm not mistaken. Or Core Set 15, sorry. And, or actually, it may have been Magic Origins. Can't remember. It's in one of those sets. And we haven't seen a card like Seasons Past, one that recurs cards from the graveyard based on their CMC, in quite a while. Seasons Past specifically, it lets you get back a card of a permanent of each mana value from your graveyard, as long as they're all different. So you can get like a 1, a 2, you get a 0, a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, however many you have in there that are different mana values. And we haven't seen something like that in actually quite some time. Actually, I think since Seasons Past. So I feel like we may be getting another card very much like Seasons Past. This would be a great place to do it because Seasons Past didn't really see standard play. And I'd have to imagine that another card like Seasons Past, depending on its casting conditions and whatnot, also would not see play, and we'd get a cool, fun little number for Commander, or at least another cool, fun little number for Commander.
I mean, Seasons Past is only a 6 CMC spell.
Only 6. Lol.
It's in Commander. That's like turn 2.
Yeah, I know that, but that's why it didn't see standard plays, because it was so expensive.
Now, I'm gonna straighten this out, Paul, before you get blasted in the comments or in the from the Twitter. Seasons Past was in Shadows over Innistrad.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Okay. I thought you said Magic Origins. Yeah, you did. You said Magic Origins and M15 or something. And I was like, this is Shadows over Innistrad, dude. So I was just, before you get, blown up in the comments going, oh, he's done it again. I thought I would just make that distinct clear.
I can't wait for people on YouTube to pause the video as soon as I say that and immediately comment. Actually, it's from Shadows over Innistrad.
Oh, don't be like that. All right, let's move on. So the next one is then if you have fewer than 3 cards in hand, draw cards equal to the difference.
We've seen this text on a few cards. We've seen it on, I think most recently is Sandstone Oracle, because I think that got printed in Commander Legends as an uncommon.
Mm-hmm. It was a rare, wasn't it?
Originally, it was an uncommon. I think it was printed in one of the Commander sets. We've seen it on Kozilek, the Great Distortion. He has a very similar line of text. And we also have seen it on Damia, Sage of Stone, which is probably the oldest possible ability of this particular wording that we have reference for. And she's a Gorgon. So of the 3 cards I just mentioned, which I can't even remember what the first one was, Sandstone Oracle is a Sphinx. We have Kozilek, who's an Eldrazi, and we have Dami, who's a Gorgon. I think we're probably most likely to see Gorgons. So I feel like maybe we're seeing the first time that this is going to be coined to be a Gorgon effect, which would be really cool, because Gorgon is a really cool creature type. They look really sweet. And I'm almost positive there's Gorgons in D&D lore. James would correct me right now if there wasn't. Okay, perfect.
Yes,
so that would actually be super cool if we could get some Gorgon support in this set.
I mean, having that effect on a Gorgon and then having Gorgon, because I mean, Gorgons just aren't on this plane, I guess. Like, I don't know if this is a whole different plane or if this is just like a side shift to like how we're going to get there story-wise. I have no idea like how they're going to like make this work, or if this is just like one of those, in a different parts of the universe. Here is this, because we haven't really seen any like main characters. Like we haven't seen Liliana or Jace or any of those kind of characters on this plane yet. We've really only seen like brand new planeswalkers. So who knows how we'll get there story-wise. But yeah, there's not only Gorgons in D&D and in this set, but yeah, like Paul said, we've got Gorgons before. So maybe having this effect going forward as a Gorgon ability would be really cool. And then we can have more Gorgon tribal, and then I can finally have a Gorgon tribal deck. That's all I want. That was a really long-winded way of saying I want Gorgon tribal, dang it. All right, so we only have 3 of these left. The first one of those 3 is whenever you cast a creature spell that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control or a creature card in your graveyard.
Yeah, on the script, I have honestly not sure. And I'm going to say the same thing here. I'm honestly not sure with this one. It is extremely open-ended. There isn't really a way, at least to my knowledge, to predict what this could possibly be referencing. Again, I'm sure there is a D&D buff out there that could probably put the pedal to the metal and figure out what this one is trying to reference, or like if there's a spell or something that has to do with, like, I don't know, if you're fighting zombies, do something to non-zombies, blah blah blah. I don't know. It's hard to say.
Yeah, this one is pretty open-ended. Like, it's very, like, again, yes, it's rules text, but it's not really like rules text is going to point us in a certain direction.
Yeah, that one I'm going to have to leave for now. Again, I would love to tell you my thoughts on it, but I can't. I don't even know where to start.
All right. Well, the next one is you may cast this creature's name from your graveyard if a creature not named this creature's name died this turn.
This is another confusing one, but this one has a little more direction than the previous one. And my prediction for this is actually based on a campaign that, well, my very first campaign that I ever did back in New York, where there was some kind of cult, and I was thinking, like, maybe this represents something like that. Maybe it's some kind of cult where, like, if one of your members died this turn, I don't know. Let's say let's call this card Australian Cult. Right?
Whoa.
And let's say if one of your Australian cults didn't die that turn, then the ones that have died in the graveyard, they get to keep the riot going, or they get to keep the ideas of the cult alive.
Let's just say the party going. Like, why has it got to be a cult? Why has it got to be a riot? What kind of, like, anarchist people do you think Australians are, bro?
It was just something that came up with off the top of my head.
I mean, that's fair. I mean, if your only, like, exposure to Australia is the Mad Max series, then I guess everything you just said was correct.
I've never seen Mad Max. Don't even know what that is.
Oh, okay then. Anyway, that's a whole different topic for a discussion, not on a podcast. So the last one we have to talk about, Paul, is when its power becomes 20 this way.
20 is a really large number.
I mean, it's no bigger than 40.
Really, really large number. So large, in fact, that it seems almost legendary. And for that reason, this makes me feel like there's going to be some kind of legendary creature that has that pack tactics mechanic that we mentioned before, because pack tactics cares about power. And, like, maybe this legendary creature will be like pack tactics. Whenever you attack creatures that have power 6 or greater, this creature gains their power or whatever, something to that effect. But it definitely does seem like a legendary line of text to me. When its power becomes 20, that is a very large number. That's like Moss Bridge Troll large.
Yeah, and I mean, like, 20 is pretty big if you think standard wise. But I mean, us commander players, 20 is not all that big. I mean, I've had 1990s on the board before, Paul. I didn't get to do anything with them, but I had them on the board. But yeah, I understand, like, with the mindset of this being a standard set, 20 is pretty big. That's able to one-shot your opponent. That's able to two-shot somebody in commander. So yeah, I think the only mechanic that we can really think of with this one would be the pack tactics mechanic. So I think if you're not right, you're definitely on, like, the right track with this one. I came up blank on this one, honestly. I was like, yeah, it has to be something to do with attacking, right?
I can't imagine that it's not.
Yeah.
The fact that it says this way makes me feel like it's not tied to a spell, it's tied to a permanent. So I don't know. It's hard to say, because if it was a spell, I feel like it would just say if that creature's power is 20.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I know exactly what you're saying there. Cool. So that's all of our statements and all of our rules statements and everything. So if we got them wrong or if we got them right, you can get at us with however you want to tell us. You can do that at Twitter and Instagram at CMDR@arms. We have the YouTube channel where you're either watching this or you're listening to this on Spotify or anywhere else you get better podcasts. Go over to YouTube, check it out, subscribe, hit the bell, like our videos, do everything that you're supposed to do for a YouTube video. Help the analytics, help the algorithm, and help us get spread out on there. If you want any sealed products, single products, or I guess anything that you can get online while still supporting LGSs, you can do that at TCG Player using our affiliate link, tcgplayer.com/commanderatarms. We have our merch shirt that is still available. The link is in either the show notes below or the video's description below. It'll be below this video / the link will be down the link will be down there. Go click it, check out the shirt. It's on Etsy. It's great. If you want to become a patron, you can do that at patreon.com/commanderatarms. All tiered patrons get a shout out at the start of each episode. We also have access to our Discord channel where we hang out and play Magic and kind of theorycraft things and talk about spoilers and everything Magic related. And then Paul has his little special thank you.
As always, if this is the first and only episode you ever have or ever will listen to, me and James thoroughly appreciate you taking the time to do so. That's your time. You choose to spend it how you want, and the fact that you chose to spend it listening to us is very flattering and humbling, and we appreciate it. If you did like what you heard, please feel free to share us around with your friends and your play groups. Just get our name out there. Make sure you tell them, hey, they got this really cool YouTube channel and this podcast that they do. Go check them out. Get your friends involved, and make sure you tell them to do the same thing. Really helps us out. But at a bare minimum, just listening also helps out a lot. So thank you all for doing that.
And with that, I'm James.
And I'm Paul.
And you've been listening to the newest episode of the Commander at Arms podcast.
Peace. See ya.